back to another episode of Quarantined Coaches. This time we are in Boston, Massachusetts with Coach Stark of Harvard. How are you today, man?
Good, Josh. How you doing?
I am doing all right. My first question to you, though, is Harvard, right? When we're growing up and we're kids and you ask really anybody in the world, like, hey, where are you going to go to school? Everybody's like Harvard, right? Or Princeton. And our parents always want us to grow up and go to Harvard. Why is that? What is it? I mean, I know it's high academic, but there's a lot of high academic schools out there.
Yeah, I would say like anything, the resources, right? When you have some of the best stuff, whether you're a business, corporation, a school, a team, a program, if you have some of the best stuff available, it's just going to allow you to continue to be successful. And I think a lot of the people that have come through Harvard, whether they're athletes or non-athletes, I think because of their experience and how they've been challenged, and then how they basically in turn come back after they started their career and realize the impact and the resources they were allowed to use and the skills developed here at Harvard. It's kind of been this cycle, very cyclical. When people grow up, then that gets passed down to further generations. So it's like anything, though. I'm sure Harvard's always looking at how they can remain at the top amongst all these other great schools and institutions. So they're continually to develop and kind of reinvest their resources into the next best thing to keep that next generation hungry for a place like Harvard.
Are you able to put together a good baseball team?
Yeah, I think we've been doing all right with that. We've had some guys go on to the next level. We've just came off our first Ivy League championship in quite some time. But I think the challenges that a lot of people think about when you're recruiting at a place like Harvard, I can turn around and say, well, school X has their own challenges. Yes, with the name Harvard comes the challenges of finding those really good athletes that fit the mold academically and what we're looking for as people. So it kind of balances off, where we're looking and who we're looking at. The pool is probably smaller, but we're allowed to be at the same time more specific in that regard. So no, we got guys that want to come here and play ball, and Harvard wants people that want to excel, whether that's in a lab, playing an instrument, or on a ball field. So that's no different.
Shifting into the on the field stuff, I know that you and I talking previously, you were starting to tell me about Doc Hansen and the sports psychologist and the work you did with him, and now how you're bringing that to your guys. Can you expand on that a little bit? I truly don't know much about it.
Yeah, so Dr. Tom Hansen has done a lot of work in the mental side of baseball. He's written a couple books with the late Ken Revisa, Heads Up Baseball and Heads Up Baseball 2.0. I ran into Doc last summer, and typically I don't usually wear Harvard stuff while recruiting, and it just so happened that I was this day, and he threw out a name of a common friend. So we started talking, and what started off as potentially a personal and professional development turned into a friendship, and somebody that I really wanted to present to Coach Decker and see if we couldn't get him involved with our program. And we've done that since the fall, and it's really been eye-opening. A lot of the stuff that he has brought into our program has been stuff that basically reaffirmed what we've established with under Coach Decker. A lot of the values that are important to us, but then there's also been another group of stuff that has just been eye-opening and twisted our thoughts in certain ways to help us excel, but also to realize dealing with individuals and how we may think we know somebody or what makes somebody tick, when in all reality we were really far off. So,
For example, give me an example of a strategy that you're now using that you learned.
yeah, so there's we did our players did an assessment with Doc, and we did one as well, and it's basically broken down into four main categories. And for the most part, when you look at it as a diagram or a chart, you see, well, yeah, Coach Decker's there, Coach Stark, Chad Minato, Jake Suttleson, Kieran Shaw, and down and down. And you're like, those guys all place. And then you see a random player in a certain area, and you're like, that can't be. And then you start digging in deeper, and you start having those discussions. And it kind of makes us think twice about how we may approach an individual. And none of this is to create like walking on glass, anything like that. If anything, it's to help us each other back and forth to just get to the point, be more direct. I think that's the one thing we found out is a lot of our guys really want the substance laid onto them, right away, instead of trying to ease them into something or make them kind of feel good about themselves before they get into whether it's a drill or a specific philosophy in what we're doing. So, I think the one thing that Doc always brought up, and it struck with me, was to be a good teammate, you got to make sure your stuff is in order first. And I think that really resonates. Coach Decker says it daily to invest in one another, and this helped us take it to another level.
So when you talk about like that chart and plotting the different, I guess, personalities or learning styles,
Yeah.
like what is it that chart's taking into consideration?
It's, to be honest, we would probably need, for me to explain it to you, we would probably need 2 hours. For
Okay.
Doc to explain it to you, probably 10 minutes. But
personalities, learning style.
Yeah, a lot of personality stuff. That's where a lot of it comes from. And again, when it's broken down, it's not like, hey, you are personality A or personality B or C. It's, hey, you lean this way, so be aware of this in these certain situations, because you may begin to develop an attitude or judgment, or you may get down on yourself, whatever it may be. So be aware of that. It's never, hey, you're this way and that's bad, we got to change it. It's, you're this way, so how can we, in certain situations, get out in front of you potentially being detrimental to yourself.
And you obviously you didn't have a ton of time to see the results this season, but what were some of the early indications where you could see like, wow, this is working?
Yeah, I think anytime you put somebody in front of your program that has not necessarily new ideas, but just a different way of thinking or going about things, and then there's discussion afterwards, and then that discussion continues, and then it continues to continue, which it did with our program. To me, that in itself showed that it was working. It wasn't like, hey, we had a Zoom meeting with Doc, our players did an assessment, and then it went away. Yeah, we took time in between each level or step with Doc, but our players always brought it up, and us as a staff always reflected on it. So even though we weren't able to see it all work through an entire season, the point, in our opinion, was the daily, and we were able to see that right away, the impact. And we knew it was healthy, and we knew it was something that our guys were willing and able to commit to, just because they wanted to bring it up as often as they could. And we probably stretched Doc thin. A lot of our guys probably could have talked to him for hours upon hours, but he's just a great resource to us. And I think one of the greatest takeaways too was he used to tell our guys all the time, what you think is how you feel. And to us, that just became something I would say to myself all the time, since meeting Doc last year.
Huh. That's a fascinating way also, and it makes complete sense of determining if it's successful. Like if you see the guys are super excited about it, regardless of almost what they're getting out of it,
Right.
it's something
Right.
they're all engaged in and wanting to learn more about. That's interesting. Why don't
Right.
you normally wear a Harvard shirt when you're out recruiting?
Well, I don't know. I used to think it was probably when I was a younger coach out recruiting, I thought putting on, um, head earbuds without any music and not wearing Harvard gear would allow me to sit in between parents and kind of hear how they go about their business. I would ask a travel coach if, let's say, I'm in Georgia, um, and I used to do this all the time. I really like to get on the field, but plant corn, get corn. So if the parents are yahoos, then there's a chance that the kid will be a yahoo. So I would ask the coach, "Hey, where are the parents sitting?" And I would kind of wander over there with my earbuds on, without any music, and try to listen in to see if there's some of those crazy folks out there, or if they kind of mind their own business. So that, and honestly, it's a great honor to wear the H shield. There's no doubt about it. But I don't like the eyes sometimes. It's more of a personal thing. I want to just go about my business and do my job for our program, our department, and this school. So um,
Well, there's
I
that
know.
sneaky. Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's just I'm aware of what makes what how I work and how I operate, and anything that can distract me is taking away from what I'm doing for our program. And my ultimate goal is to lessen the mistakes so they don't burden other people in our program. And that's something I go to bed and wake up, especially in the middle of the recruiting season, is um, the work you do or don't do. It's going to impact Coach Decker, Coach Kirkpatrick, um, our trainer if we're bringing in the wrong guy, our strength and conditioning guy if we're bringing in the wrong guy, our athletic department, our school as a whole. Um, so it's not that it's a burden, but I want to make sure that we're really doing our due diligence in all regards.
There is this sneaky side of recruiting, right? And your answer was interesting. One of the things that I kind of thought that you might say was you don't want other coaches to know necessarily that maybe you're onto a guy too, right? Or see that Harvard's there because would it be fair to say that that kind of thing exists where coaches don't want other coaches to know maybe they're there or who they're looking at?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it does, as it probably does in a lot of professions. Small businesses probably aren't sharing their ideas with others, and vice versa. But I think you have to stay concerned with what you're doing. Each program, I've definitely come to find this out, and it's challenging every year. Each program has different needs. That specific year, that whatever it may be, some program may be bringing in 6 guys, or another one's looking to bring in 18. So it's always nice to be at a field and you see some really good programs around you. You typically feel like you're watching the right guys. Um, but as far as the secrecy, you know, I don't think I don't think there's anything for us to be concerned about. I kind of keep to myself, and I know our staff kind of does the same thing. If people were to ask questions, I think we give them a very transparent answer. Um, and that's a lot of times that's in the benefit of the athletes that are out on the field. There's a lot of people that I've gotten to know over my time recruiting that never ended up either at Rochester Navy or Harvard, and I've stayed in touch with either them or their parents just because of the relationships we've built. So, um, yeah, it's I'm sure it's out there. You see it, and I think you've made a comment to me before about we look like we're all like Terminators, just on the prowl, and um, I don't know if it's sometimes, hey, we just got to get over ourselves. Who do we think we are? Or if it's, hey, we're there to work and we're going about our business.
I
Um,
think it's well that part of it. I think it's more that, right? And like you guys will, well, first of all, there's rules that say you can't talk to parents and players and all that. And so
Right.
you're put into an awkward situation at these events when they come up to you.
Right.
But at the same time, like I would be annoyed. Like you're working, this is your job. Like you're, like you said, like you have to be fully locked in. So I don't think that's bad. I think just for coaches, like coaches, that's like the first time they've heard of it and they start to think like to them, yeah, we look like Terminators, right? We're out there with our
Yeah.
glasses, our radar guns, we're whispering, and then we're on to the next game. And it's not like you guys are, it's not that you're full of yourself, you're working, and that's what work looks like. Uh,
Right.
but why is everybody whispering all the time?
I I don't know. I think, yeah, and well, and it's, you know, Josh, like I know you've put forth some really good players to us, right? The guys that we've watched play. And I know that you're also doing that for other programs. And so to think there aren't secrets, there are. There definitely are. I'm certain of it that but that gets into the fact that those same people that may have been a diamond in the rough or someone you run into, once you get into the recruiting process, which to us is presenting and laying out Harvard, that means you have to compare and contrast to other programs and schools. You have to. The last thing we want is somebody to come in here and be slapped across the face that they didn't know what they were getting into. But I don't, like I want to stay on this though because you're definitely, let's discuss the undiscussables here. Like everybody thinks that, everybody feels that at times, and maybe it's just because it's rarely talked about, or maybe coaches stay in small little cliques, which is definitely out there. If we see somebody and they don't quite have the grades, we're going to share that information with as many people as we know personally. At least we know they're going to end up. The kid's going to end up at a good spot.
Wait, so you guys are gonna go? You see a kid, you like him, you find out, hey, he's not gonna work for us, but you might have a buddy on the coaching circuit, and you're like, let me clue my buddy in. This might work for them. Um,
Yeah,
so
I
that is taking place out there too, where you're helping each other identify guys, but maybe, hey, I don't want the competitor to hear about it, but let me tell my buddy.
no question, and I got to believe that's standard practice for a lot of people. There's still more good in this world than there is bad, and that just reigns through or true and through everything. Yeah, and that's easy. That's awesome. Whether you're taking notes on a specific kid, whether it's a certain level that you feel that kid can play at, a certain style of play that kid fits, and you just put little notes to schools that you may know people at that, hey, later that night or later that week, you say, saw this kid down in Florida, saw this kid in New England, saw this kid in Washington. I think you should get on him, this and that. This is what I saw. And matter of fact, yeah, I'm actually seeing him next week. Perfect. There you go. And we've gotten the same support and assistance from others. Yeah, I think that's, as much as people want to be secret at times, I feel like that that policy is out there too, where we're in it to help. Even if it is just to help another program or a buddy, it's also helping the athlete, the kid, and the family.
How could seeing somebody else's notebook, let's pretend this is a secret notebook of notes, right? Because I mean, in some senses, kind of is. It's your scouting reports,
Right.
it's your personal information that what you've been gathering. Like, how could seeing somebody else's out there, like, how big of an impact could that potentially make to another school?
Yeah, I don't know, because personally, I wouldn't be able to look at somebody else's notes and then start, or just their thoughts on guys, unless I know them personally, the coach. Um, I don't think I would be able to handle all of that and stay focused on knowing what we're looking for and what we need and what works at specifically Harvard. specifically Harvard, and um, I'm not good enough to sit there and if I had everybody else's notes, I would start going crazy. I would start second guessing this and that. So I just, and in the past, man, I loved it when people gave us information. But what I've come to find out is we know it works here at Harvard. And in constant communication with Coach Decker about this. And, moving forward, if somebody gave me, if Coach at School X gave me their scouting report on or their notes on a specific kid, I may look at it and say, "Wow, I'm way off," and I don't want those thoughts. I'd rather go down with with what I feel and believe in for our program and what we're doing recruiting wise. Everybody sees things differently.
Right, but then just to I want this to be more like of a fun, right, and funny conversation somewhat about it. Like, then why is everybody keeping such tight lips and small notes and keep it close to the vest? Like what's everybody so worried about? Because every coach I've ever talked to says a similar thing where we have our own style anyway. We don't care what somebody else is doing. So like, what's all the secret notes about, like, in whispering about? Like, I just find it funny. Like, that's part of the work environment, right?
Right. I know. I don't know. I know where it started. I worked with guys that have since retired, and back in the day, it was like that, where you didn't share information. Man, we got Twitter, guys are sharing every bit of information that you can possibly find now, which is great to a certain extent, as long as it doesn't turn into paralysis by analysis. But yeah, I don't know. I used to be a little bit more concerned about that, but the fact is, if somebody asks to see my notes, and this is the God's honest truth, then they can come see my notes, because if they're thinking the way I'm thinking, then that's probably going to manipulate their thinking, which means that they're not following through with their own gut and mind and what they're seeing, and then they're going to get in trouble because, like I said, I want my mistakes. If there are mistakes, I want to burden that. I don't want to look back a year or two and say, man, I was talked into that individual, and I knew it. I knew it all along that wasn't going to be a fit here, So I guess once we started getting into this conversation, I was fired up because I'm like, hell yeah, let's talk about this. But maybe I'm not the person to talk about because I don't care,
I was going to have more answers for this too, or more questions. It's like, I guess that's it. Like, I guess people just whisper and write small notes, and that's just kind of what the work environment is.
Yeah, like. I don't think it's. I don't know. Maybe they feel like they're on a golf course where they got to be respectful to the kids playing baseball. I don't know, but
I think what also I do think is, like, look, we're baseball coaches, right? It's dugout talk. It's not always talking about players, right? And it's not necessarily your personal, life or fun stories or what's going on with your own family and update. You guys are also getting a chance to, casually catch up with some of your buddies. And so it's not like you want parents listening in on, how your personal life is going. I think there's a lot of that too, right?
Yeah.
Where you're not even talking about baseball. I mean, everybody assumes that when you're out there working, that all you're doing is talking about some player. Anything coming out of your mouth must be about a player,
Right.
Whereas it's like, hey man, I'm gonna go get a popcorn. You want something?
No, you're right. It's a great point. I mean, I think the busiest time is when you're going from one field to another or figuring out the GPS or whatever it may be. But once you're at that place and there's coaches around, yeah, you're going to watch kids in between pitches. You're going to watch kids in the dugout. You're going to maybe watch their parents. But there's also more time than that. So, yeah, other conversations can arise that have nothing to do with what's happening on the field. That might be family driven or, that's one of the great things about recruiting, right? You got buddies that have been in this profession with you, and they're literally your good buddies. So when you're out there recruiting, it's not like it's we're just there to shoot the breeze, but it's always nice to know, man, I'm going to the ball field. This is what I'm doing, and by the way, I'm going to run into a handful of my buddies.
Right. It was like because it really is funny, and it's not a bad thing. It's just totally like nobody really understands what the other side of things. Like if you're off on your earbuds, right, with your backpack off to the side, people are thinking, oh, who are they getting ready to offer? They like somebody. Who's he on the phone with, right? Your wife yelling at you about
Right.
not calling this morning and FaceTiming the kids.
Well, that could be too. I mean, right? Because you're like we talked about 15 minutes ago. You're wired once you get into that setting. You're wired. Hey, this is I'm going to work. Yeah, it's 75 and sunny, but I'm going to work, and I have a job to do. So I feel like over time that has progressed into the coaches are left alone. If they are talking on the phone, it's business and business only. And um, but life is continuing around you while you're at these fields, and um, you have a responsibility, an obligation, and accountability to family and friends on an upcoming family reunion or a birthday party or whatever that you still have to continue with life. So yeah, a lot of guys are probably out on the range watching ball players while also dealing with life, you know?
Right. I mean, and work is fun for you, right? Recruiting is a fun time for you, right?
Recruiting's awesome, man. Like our one of the favorite things that I love telling our guys once they get on campus.
By the way, I'm sorry, I just want to clarify that because I think like, and you and I were talking about, it looks like you're going to war, right? It looks like you're locked in, having a miserable time, and
Right.
battling for this recruit and keeping secret. But like you're having so much fun out there, right?
No question. Outside of forgetting to put like sunscreen on, everything about it is great. Um, maybe some of the hotel stays can be better, but no, it is. It's awesome, and I think um, when you talk about like a job and this is where Dex man, he always talks about it being a lifestyle, right? And it is. It is a lifestyle. I don't think we should be granted something or thought differently about what we do. And parents say it all the time, man, you guys are always on the grind, this and that. And it's not really a grind. It gets tiring. The travel part gets tiring. That's what wears you down. But being there all day, every day in the summer and everything, I mean, that's what you sign up for. If there's an issue with that, then just go look into a different line of work. But it is fun. It's awesome to once a kid, you go through the process, you commit to each other, and then they're freshmen, sophomores, juniors on campus, and you tell them how their recruiting went down and how you saw them or how you came across them or who tipped you off to them, and then how it all um, developed from there. It's actually a very interesting story. Every kid has been recruited differently. They came from a different avenue, a different pipeline, a different conversation, a different whisper. Um, and that's one of the things about being on the road recruiting. Yes, there's a lot of information online for us. Nothing beats being out on the road because there's so many more conversations that are going to happen in person that wouldn't happen if I run into people all the time that they don't have my cell phone number. And thank goodness I was out on the road that day or in that specific spot because then they say, dude, I saw this kid. I have no idea what his grades are, but he was playing over here and I've scouted for this long or I did this before that. And this kid is can't miss. All right. You go check them out. And it actually worked out that way. So again, you could get the emails, you could get stuff off of social media, you could get your texts and your phone calls, but nothing beats recruiting than being on the road because there's information you get that isn't just tossed around daily on all these other services or social media.
All right, be honest. How many times have you been supposed to go to a game and it's game number like 40 of the weekend and I just can't make it and but everybody thinks you made it.
But
People thought you were there, but you really weren't there.
honestly, this is where coach is the man. He throughout the summer, he's the one that tries to pull back the reins on us. He wants our quality of life to be there. So he knows when we're checking in on him that he may be the one to say, "Hey, who are you supposed to see? What games you supposed to see tonight or this afternoon?" And we tell him, he goes, "All right, like it's a 365 job, but in moderation. Like you have to have your boundaries and everything." So, um, there are times that I'd want to go into a certain place recruiting wise, and maybe the morning before an event starts, um, I want to go see a historical landmark or something like that. That's one thing that this profession is giving me that I'm really thankful for is I've been able to see this country through and through. Um, but yeah, that to say that I haven't, or that I have decided that I'm going to go get that steak dinner because Dak told me to.
You skipped it
Um,
here or there without people knowing. Do you,
Potentially, I mean, if this is going to cost me a future job, but no, listen, I know I put forth a good effort for this program. I really do. And I know that I can sleep at night.
There's
Um,
no way for any of you guys. What you do is crazy, especially weekends like Atlanta, where you're supposed to be at the 2 o'clock game, but then also the 4:30 game, which is an hour away, and it's pouring, and but you don't want to disappoint a kid, and you get there like it happens.
right. Well, you're a travel agent and a meteorologist all within
Right.
a 2 hour period where you're figuring stuff out. And I don't know how they did it before the GPS. Maybe these events
Isn't that crazy? Like, explain that real quick, because I would rather you explain it than me. A meteorologist and a travel agent in a matter of, point A to point B in 1 hour. Like,
Yeah,
what's that car ride look like? It's about as
yeah,
dangerous as a car ride should be. You break every rule to driving there is, right?
right. And it's I'm always prepared if I get pulled over to tell a police officer, listen, I'm in your state recruiting this individual for this school. What a great opportunity, right? And and I always envision this police officer throwing on his lights and saying, "Follow me. I'll get you there faster." Um, which I know is not the case, but yeah, it's crazy. And that's what another thing that this profession has done, right? It has built up your skills in so many other facets of this life that I go home or I do different things with different people and they're struggling with maybe an app, and you're like, no, that's not the way to go. Like or when you're traveling, you see these people traveling, you're like, well, there's a way more efficient way to do that, buddy. You know, um, but yeah, it's crazy. You're checking three websites. You're taking the average of four different weather apps to figure out which one is going to work. You know that the local Doppler um, is probably better off than using the weatherchannel.com app. You know what I mean? Like you learn all this stuff and it adds up. It really does over time.
You got the GPS going. You got the tournament's website up, trying to figure out what field
Right.
did it get moved? Is the time back? Is the weather going to hit it? Is there a McDonald's along the way?
There's yeah, there's a sick part of me that looks forward to a rain delay, because then you're like, here we go.
Yeah,
Because
of course.
that's when if you're putting forth the work and the time, you're going to be at places that others aren't.
That's how I feel about. Oh, okay. Well, yeah, I look forward to like quarantine coaches today. I got four of you guys all in a row. And it's like, damn, I wish one of you would call me and say I can't make it until later.
But who would that? It wouldn't have been me if I'm your first one, right? Because that would have still sucked.
You ain't the first one. No
Oh,
way.
I'm not. All right, all right. So
Fine.
I might have been. I may have been a great. Is that why the connection earlier was in and
Maybe.
out? You were trying to.
It is funny. I actually am gonna dig into this more with another coach where it's gonna be a little bit different where he talks about like the life of a recruiter and breaks it down. I think just kind of the personality of it all and the craziness of just
Yeah.
like literally what we're just talking about for the past 20, 30 minutes is all just one day, like
Right. Right.
what a day looks like in Atlanta. And it's just,
Yep.
it's funny to, I think it's cool for people to be able to see your personality on that side too. You know, like you're not
Yep.
terminators, you're not, you know, you're not being secretive necessarily. You're not trying to keep things from the families. This is what your workday looks like, and
Right.
it's a total shit show for lack of better words.
Right.
But it's really fun.
Listen, the parents are better off that the rules are the way they are, because I know a lot of guys and you can't shut them up, you know? So if we were allowed to talk to parents, it would be nothing but a social gathering. Nobody would get anything done. The kids would be upset that the parents are talking to the coaches and the coaches are talking to the parents, and nobody's going to be seen. You know, but yeah, there's a lot, again, there's a lot of good people there. We're not a bunch of stiffs. We're just there to do what we had to do for our particular program on that day, you know?
Yeah, it is. I just find it so interesting. Thanks for coming on and talking about this, Coach Stark.
No
Really
doubt.
appreciate it, man. You guys stay healthy and hope to see you this summer.
Yeah, same here, Josh. Thanks for everything you're doing during this time. And it's healthy, it's positive, and it's great for everybody.